It's a great pleasure for me to be able to present today's little discussion of the award for economics to Oliver Hart and Ben Holmstrom for their contributions to contract theory, because as a researcher myself, I've studied their contributions in great detail. And one thing that's important to note about the economics Nobel, aside from the difficult to pronounce name that comes before it, but it's not given for one single discovery, but rather for a body of research, right? So really what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to try my best to summarize the contributions of two great researchers to the field of contract theory, where they've made contributions for over the past 40 years. To kind of get a sense of this, we're all familiar with contracts. Contracts surround us everywhere. Many of us are currently under some obligations for contracts, either a marriage contract, you're obliged to do something with your spouse, or you're in an employment contract, your employer requires you to take certain actions. You may be in a mortgage contract. There's contracts all around, and the contracts, we can think of them as simply having a couple of elements in common. First one here is that there's a preliminary stage in which we call the contracting stage. Okay, or contracting phase, where the parties get together and write out the contract and agree to the terms. And then we have what we call the interim. That's the time between the contracting stage and the time at the end when payoffs are realized, where actions can be taken. And typically, in this interim period, there's still some uncertainty, right? So when you write a contract, imagine we don't sit down and write marriage contracts. It's an off-the-shelf contract that we all just tend to use, right? But you can imagine that if you were going to write a contract with your spouse, before entering into the marriage vows, there's some uncertainty perhaps over how things will be once you say I do, right? And you may want to specify some particular actions that you would like to see take place, so many times that your spouse will do the dishes or mow the lawn, right? But there's uncertainty as to how people will behave, and there's uncertainty as to what kind of people these parties to the contract really are. So the problems that we're trying to solve with our contracts are typically moral hazard, which is the hidden action, right? So an example of moral hazard would be in this marriage contract, for example, that you don't know if your spouse is actually doing what they say they claim they want to do, right? They say they're going to do the dishes all the time, but if you're not around watching them, maybe they aren't going to be doing the dishes, right? So moral hazard is simply the fact that there are actions that cannot be contracted on, that they could be observable, but they're non-contractable, okay? And so, you think about the dishes. You could write, my wife could write a contract with me about doing the dishes. She could say, I want you to do dishes. And when she comes home, the dishes would all be in the rack. But how clean would they be, right? It's very difficult to specify, every aspect of the contract, right? So there's moral hazards still in a lot of these cases. And adverse selection, people, I hate to think of the world in black and white, but there's good people and bad people, for example, right? And people may have different motives. And you don't know what kind of party you're engaging in a contract with until actions take place, right? So there still can be some uncertainty in the time period in which actions take place, but one thing's for sure, at the end of the day, payoffs will be made according to the contract, okay? Now, the contributions made by Hart and Holmstrom, a lot of it's really mathematical, and I really appreciate the mathematics, as we talked about the prize in physics earlier. Mathematics allows you to see things very clearly, right, that are otherwise difficult to understand. Well, for most of us, well, I guess, I don't know why I would say for most of us, for some of us, mathematics allows us to see things very clearly that are difficult to understand. So, I'm going to put up just two equations here, just to kind of set the stage. And I promise you that we won't, everything else is pictures from here on out. I'm that kind of professor. But I just want us to get a simple understanding. This looks really complicated, but it's actually not that. It's very simple in a lot of ways. The letters here and the superscripts and stuff, it all makes it look fancy, right? And it's not mean to be intimidating, but this is just two items that I couldn't leave out of the presentation. So the first is that with this contracting problem, we have this incentive compatibility constraint. This is that if you write a contract, you would hope that your contract is written in a way that gets the parties that are party to the contract to behave in a particular way, the way that you would like. So for example, with the dishwashing, if you think of EH being high effort and EL being low effort, the payoff, to the spouse when they take the good action, they put in the high effort, should be higher than the payoff that they get and they put in the low effort, right? That's part of an optimal contract any optimal contract should satisfy this incentive compatibility constraint. And the other one is this participation constraint that, the payoff to being part of the contract has to be better than your outside option, right? And, some people, they don't ever get married because the outside option is pretty good, right? So, these things matter, right? People don't enter into contracts unless they are properly motivated to take the appropriate actions within the contract. So what Hart and Holmstrom did is they took those incentive compatibility constraints and the participation constraint and expanded on them in a number of different dimensions. Okay, and so what we're going to do now is, instead of me showing you all the math, which would be kind of fun for me but maybe not for you, we're going to work with an example. Okay. And so I think a great example for tonight is that we can all imagine that it's the summertime in Kelowna, okay, and you're getting ready to go enjoy some time at the beach. And I don't know about you guys, but in the summer all I think about is starting that mobile gelato business that I've always been dreaming about, right? And if we think about this, it's a simple problem. You need some capital, right? You need to have your mobile gelato stand that you can cart around the beach, right? And you need to have an employee that's going to ride the bike, okay? So what are some of the things that we can think about as being potential problems when contracting with this employee in the mobile gelato business? Well, first of all, if we go back just to these two equations, we know that we need to make sure that we pay the person who's driving the bike around enough to be more than what they would otherwise get, right? So you're paying them at least what they're going to get from some other job, right? But if you really care about the profits of your gelato business, you want to pay them such that when they take the actions that would lead to more profits, you're paying them more than when they take the actions that lead to lower profits, okay? So one of the things that Holmstrom in particular wrote about was performance pay. Right, and we could talk about CEO contracts, but I find that a little bit boring compared to the ice cream. But two problems that come up with performance pay are multitasking and team production. So multitasking is simply the fact that there are multiple dimensions to a lot of the outcomes that are desirable from a contract. Okay, in the example with the ice cream stand, there may be someone you may want the worker to scoop out the ice cream and to take the money, for example, okay? It's pretty easy in that case to say, well, we can pay this person based on the profits or the revenue of the gelato business. Performance pay should work well, but there are other examples, such as teaching, for example, where performance pay may not work very well. There's a big debate in the United States and Canada about paying teachers based on the scores of standardized tests for their students, right? But if we think about education being something that's probably more multidimensional than just being about a simple standardized test score, if we were to give performance pay to teachers, they may place too much weight on the standardized test preparation and not enough weight on other tasks that we also think are important educational outcomes. Okay? The other problem is team production, right? If imagine that there's these two tasks, so you think to yourself, well, let's take that mobile gelato bike and make it into a tandem bicycle, have two workers go around, one can take the cash, the other one can scoop the ice cream. Okay? But in this team production problem, in this team production process, if we're paying them both based on the performance of the company, how much revenue we raise, they both have incentives to underinvest and to put in lower effort. Okay, that's a team production problem, and this is one of, I think, the more groundbreaking insights that Holmstrom had. It's not. It's clear to all of us. Anyone who's married knows that team production problems happen, right? That everyone, if you both share the benefits equally, then you both have an incentive to underinvest, right? But what Holmstrom showed is that when we think about the team production process, this problem shows us why we see, for example, capital hiring labor and not the other way around. Why don't the two ice cream producers rent out the ice cream cart, right? The simple reason why is that they cannot properly incentivize themselves as a team. What you would need to have is a manager who can, impose penalties or provide rewards in terms of bonuses. Okay, so something that was very insightful. Okay, Oliver Hart, keeping on with our ice cream example here, his contribution focuses on two other aspects of contracts. One is the idea of incomplete contracts, and the other is the idea of privatization. Okay, so in terms of incomplete contracts, think about it. If you have this person you hired to drive your ice cream cart around and sell ice cream on the beach, do you want to write into that contract exactly where that person is going to go? Okay, chances are you won't want to. There could be a flash mob over by Prospera Place. If you tell him he has to go to the beach in a particular location on the beach, then he's not going to go to the other location where there may be more people. Right? So part of it, so what Hart demonstrated in his research is that oftentimes the optimal contracts are going to be incomplete. Contracts are always going to be incomplete by construction because we can't write a contract about everything. But sometimes even when we can write in everything to the contract, we still may want to leave some room. And what really matters is who gets the decision rights in that event. It's the assignment of authority. Who gets to decide? That really matters for the profitability of the firm and the performance of the workers in that case. And the last insight that we can see from Hart here is on privatization. And so, thinking with our ice cream example, just extending it as academics like to do this until it becomes absurd, right? So imagine that the city of Kelowna decides that they think everyone should have ice cream, It should be free. Like healthcare, like education, this publicly provided good. Everyone gets ice cream. The question is, how should it be produced? Hart has suggested that privatization can be beneficial when the trade-offs between quality and cost-cutting are not too strong. Okay? So in other words, if it's the case that you can still get ice cream that looks delicious like this, when it's privatized, then maybe that's a good idea because the private sector may have some advantages in terms of having decision rights over certain parts of the production process. If the private entity that would produce the ice cream would be rewarded highly in terms of profits by cutting costs, and those cost reductions would lead to a lower quality product, the ice cream would be not as delicious or not as pleasant to look at, well then, public provision is optimal. Right? So what really matters here, again, is who has the decision rights and recognizing that the outcomes that we think are desirable oftentimes cannot be accurately articulated into the contract. So just to sum up, contributions were for a large body of work. Performance pay is hazardous when multitasking is important. When teamwork is involved, an owner or manager is often necessary for efficiency. Maybe that's why people hire life coaches. Optimal contracts are often incomplete. And efficient privatization of public service provision requires not too strong a trade-off between quality and costs.